Hey there, let's build a computer. Welcome back to the channel. Today this is a guide on how to build a computer. We're going to go step by step. We'll go over the parts, then we'll get to building, and by the end of this, you can build your own. So let's get started. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about the parts for this build. This is a very budget-friendly, cheap build that we're looking at here today. It's mostly just so that I can have something to toy around with as far as development goes, because that's what we do here on the channel. We do a lot of development. So we're going to be using the Ryzen 3. This is a 1300 or 1200X actually, or 1200. It's a quad core first gen Ryzen CPU, so it's not the biggest deal in the world, but you know, it'll be enough for what we're going to do. We've got a 240 gig M.2 SSD. I don't believe it's NVMe. We've got 16 gigs of Flare X. The reason we're using this is because I had it laying around. We are using the NVIDIA GT10. This is just because we need something for video, because we are using a Ryzen processor with that integrated graphics. So we've got to use, you know, something like that. We've got the Gigabyte B450M. This is part of their UD or Ultra Durable series. So this is going to be our motherboard. The reason we went with this is because it's pretty cheap. That's the whole point of this build, is to be as cheap as possible. We're going to be using the Gamax cooler by Deepcool. We're using it because it's cheap as well. We'll go over setting it up, and we're going to put it inside of an H500 that I had that already has a 500 watt power supply in it, because power supplies are ridiculous at this point in time. So that's what we're going to use. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing we need to do is let's take the motherboard out of the box. So here we go. I'm taking it out of the box. It comes with some SATA cables. We don't really need those, but if you're going to put in a DVD drive or Blu-ray drive or whatever, you'll need that. The motherboard is going to be covered in an electrostatic bag. Whenever you work with computer parts, you probably want to wear an ESD wristband. I'm not, just because I've grounded myself, but I'm not wearing one. But go ahead and take it out of here as gently as possible. So we'll take this out. Okay, so here's the board. It's a very basic board, but listen, it'll be plenty for what we're doing. There's our I/O shield. We'll need that. Okay, just seeing what else is in the box. A whole lot of nothing. So we'll go ahead and set this down. This is on a wood surface, so it doesn't have any ESD in it. But a good thing to do is to work on the box. So here we are. Alright, so now we are ready to begin building. What I like to do first is I actually like to go ahead and get the M.2 in. And so this one here already has the screw where it needs to be. So we're just going to take the screw out. Okay. And then go ahead and line it up. So it'll go like this, down here in the M.2 slot. Boom, just like that. Then we get our screwdriver and screw. And we put that bad boy in. There we go. Simple enough. Next thing I like to do is I like to go ahead and put in my processor. So on this Ryzen board and with the CPU, you go ahead and we're going to pump up the lever here. We're going to grab the processor by the sides. Be careful not to touch the gold pins on here, so grab it by the side. Be careful not to touch the gold pins at the bottom. And this goes in with the Ryzen logo parallel to this logo here. So it'll go just like this. And there's actually gold triangles on both the CPU and the socket to show you. Okay, boom. So that is in. What we're going to do now, this CPU has been used before, so we are going to go ahead and clean it off. And what I'm using here is I'm using some M.2 SSD wipes. This right here cleans off thermal paste. These things are awesome. These will be linked in the description as long as all the hardware, as well as the hardware. But these things are awesome. These are a lifesaver. Sometimes they're not on Amazon, but when they are, I typically grab about 4 to 5 boxes of them just to have them, because I don't want to take a chance on losing them, because they are that awesome. So I'm just going to clean it up here, make sure that I've got all the thermal paste off that I can. Okay, these help because they're not messy. You don't have to worry about using a Q-tip or alcohol or anything like that. Alright, so there we go. We are clean now. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to work on installing the bracket and stuff for our cooler. And so if you've got the AMD cooler, you actually have to take these off, okay, and then put it down to the back plate. But because we're using an aftermarket cooler, we have to go about it a little bit differently. So we still need to take off the bracket here. There's 4 screws, so 2 on each side. Okay. Okay, and so we just lift it up, and the back plate, which is metal, looks like this, and this will come off. We don't need that. So for this one, it's got a plastic back plate with these 2 long screws in it, and it just kind of, you just line it up on the back. It goes in like so. Sometimes it'll fall if you don't hold it correctly. It is easier to do this outside of the computer case. So it goes like that, and then we need the rest of our parts here. There they are. Okay. This comes with 4 little doohickeys that kind of go on. I forgot, with most of these you have washers that need to go on each side, so, or each screw. So just put those on. This will help protect the board from shorting out. Okay. There we go. So now we're ready to put these 4 things on. Now these do screw on, so there's no easy ticket here. You just have to screw it on. So let's go ahead and screw these on. Like so. Okay, you don't want to go super tight, but just, make sure it's finger tight. You don't want to hulk it or anything. Okay, So I'm just making sure that they're finger tight. Alright, next thing we need to do is we need to put thermal paste on the CPU. This cooler does come with thermal paste. A lot of coolers come with it pre-applied. However, I'm not using the thermal paste with this. I always use Arctic MX4. This is what I use on all of my builds, and so that's what we're going to use today. To me, it is fantastic for the price. So it's just great stuff. All right, now that we put the thermal paste on, take the thing off the bottom of the plastic bit, line it up on here, and set it on. Woo-hoo. And so now we've got the cooler on here. We need to, however, screw it down. And so there's going to be 4 screws like this on this. It's got a spring on it to make sure that you don't tighten it down too far. So you will need to push the spring down just a tad bit though to get it to start to spin. You want to do this on each side. So whenever you're putting this on, do one side at a time. Do not tighten it all the way. Just get it tight enough to where it will stay on. So you'll go in diagonal, so from corner to corner. Go from here to here, then here to here. Okay, that one's on. Same thing. Then we'll go to this side. Okay. And then we will go to this side. There we go. Alright, so now that that is done as far as getting them to stick, now we're just going to go from corner to corner and tighten it up. Now don't tighten it up. You're not trying to put the processor through the board, but just go in a diagonal pattern like this until it gets tight, and eventually you'll be finished. So make sure not to over tighten. The screw should stop you. The spring should stop you from going too tight. But in case they do not, just get it to where it's on there fairly snug. But they should start to click whenever it's tight enough. Okay. They should also be finger tight. You shouldn't be able to tighten them with your fingers. So if you want to just go around, check it, see if you can tighten it with your fingers. Unless you're just massive and can tighten everything with your fingers. But if you can tighten it with your fingers, you just go just a little bit more. Alright, that is done. Next thing we need to do is put the fan on. But before we need to put the RAM in. So before we put the RAM in, I'm going to turn the board around here. I like to do mine in the 2nd and 4th slot, and so it's going to be the 2nd slot from the from the socket, and then the 4th slot from the socket. That's where I like to go ahead and put mine in. Most boards require that if you're only using 2 sticks. So you just take them, line them up like so. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes manufacturers have a little bit different specs, so okay. So just flip it around. Just take it and you gently push down and it will click into place, except this one's not wanting to. There we go. Just take it, push it evenly on both sides, and it will click into place. There we go. So that one's taken care of. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the fan on. This fan here comes with these 2 little things that go on the side of it. to hold it on to the tower, heatsink. So I am just going to put these, they go in the screw holes. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these in the screw holes. Okay. And then I'm going to position this on our tower here. Now, depending on the size of your board, this fan may go over the first RAM slot, so that's typically why I do this one. The second one, if I'm going to be using a tower heatsink like so. So this is what's called push. So that means that the fan is pushing air through the tower and it's coming out back here, which will then go into the rear exhaust on the motherboard or the case. And then I'm just going to plug it into the CPU fan header. Okay, so that concludes what we need to do to get the motherboard prepared to put into the case. Alright, now that we've got our motherboard prepared outside of the box, it is time to put it inside the case. So I'm going to clean up here real quick. I want to make sure that I don't lose any of these parts. So it's good to have a little bag handy that we can keep hold of all of our parts. So we'll go ahead, put everything in the little baggie, put it off to the side, clean up our area a little bit. We don't need these SATA cables, but if we did, they would go in these slots here. Alright, refer to your motherboard for which slots need to be used to not use an additional SATA chipset if it's on there. Okay, so the first thing we need to do to get ready for our motherboard is to put the I/O shield in. So sometimes I/O shields can be really tough to put in. Sometimes they're easy to put in. So it really just depends. Also at this point in time you could also put the power supply in your case. But I have already done that. So the power supply is already in. Just to save a little bit of time. Alright, so I/O shield goes in the back here. So if I turn this around, you'll see where it goes. It goes right in here. And so just make sure that it's the way it needs to be. So if you look at the back, you'll see, okay, well, that's wrong. So we need to flip it over. Ah, that's right. Okay, and it just pops in. Be careful, these things can be very sharp and they can cut your fingers to death. I've seen it happen. My own eyes. Okay, so now our I/O shield is in, so we'll want to take the case and flip it, like so. Alright, so now it's time to put it into the case. These cables, make sure that they're out of the way, and when you put it in, you want to grab it by the cooler, like so. And then try to set it in here gently. Don't try to scrape it across the sand-offs. You'll want to do this as gently as possible. Line it up with the back I/O shield. Okay, and then set it down. Alright, make sure that it lines up with the back I/O shield. You can use the cooler to lift up on it. Okay, see if it's lining itself up. This one is not. There we go. Okay. Sometimes it does take a little bit of finagling. This case here has a standoff in it that keeps everything in place. So we'll go ahead and get started inside of the case now. Okay. So now all we need to do is we just need to screw it in. And where this is micro ATX or M.2 it's not going to take as many. Okay, here we are with a better angle. So we're going to go ahead and put in some of our screws. So all we need to do, I'm just going to pick a couple of them. We'll put a screw in here. Sometimes getting the screws in can be a little bit tricky. Like this one, there may not be a standoff there. If there's not, that's fine. We can just, there's actually not, so since there's not, we'll just go to another standoff hole. This case came with pre-installed standoffs, so it used to be back in the day that you had to put your own standoffs in, and you had like a template that you had to follow. So because this is MATX, it doesn't actually reach down to the bottom or all the way to the side, so that's fine. There's a screw up here. Moral of the story. There we go. It's much better. Okay, so we got that standoff screw in. We'll get this one in. Okay. Now we need to connect the power. So we've got this 8-pin that goes to the CPU. It's going to go up here by the cooler. This is the worst part about small cases and tower coolers, is trying to get this connector in. Okay, so now with the 8-pin in, we'll move to the 24-pin, which is right here. Okay, boom, done. These are for PCE or graphics card or something like that. If you've got those in, this is your USB 3. Put it in this header here, right here. Okay. We've also got our HD audio, which will go all the way over here in the corner. It is typically labeled HD audio, goes in fairly easy. Okay, this board does not have a whole lot of fan slots, so it looks like it's only actually got 2, maybe. So if you're running something small like this, it's perfect. This would also be the time that you do your front panel. This one's nice because it comes with a front panel, just one front panel adapter. So here's where you would put your hard drive in. For your SATA, boom, right there. Now all we need to do is find our front panel stuff. I'm going to use the flashlight on my phone so I can get in there. See a little bit better. But it should just go right here. This should be the front panel. Boom, fit like a glove. Make sure. Yep. Okay. So now our front panel's in, our front panel connector. Now we are ready for the graphics card. Okay. Like I said, this is a very cheap graphics card just so that we have video out. And by cheap, I mean dirt cheap. It's going to go into this top PCI Express. Okay. All you have to do is make sure that the screw is out that it's going to use. Okay. Make sure that you take the protective clip off the back. Boom, there we go. This one does not require external power because it doesn't draw more than 75 watts. If it does, if it was something like a 2060 or 5500 XT, 5600, something like that, it would have extra power, and that's where you use these. Okay, and we are done. We have now successfully put together our first computer. Well, not my first, but your first. Okay, then all you have to do is put the side panel on, make sure everything fits. And there we go, our basic dev machine. And that's what we wanted to accomplish, a basic dev machine. And we did, on the cheap. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. Hope you learned how to build your first computer. Stay tuned for more channels on the video, or more videos on this channel. We're going to be setting this up so that we can do some development on Windows. So that's going to be our primary OS for this one. Typically we do Mac, Linux on here. But we're going to do Windows. We're going to work with Visual Studio Code and some other things. We're going to just go in, set up our development machine, set up a dev environment, and do some coding. And I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Hope you've learned, like I said, and I hope now that you can go out and build your own computer and find a new hobby and enjoy it. It's super fun. If you haven't already, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, tell me about your first build and how it went for you. Adios.